adapted from the preface to the 5th edition of James Orchard Hallowell's 1853 edition of the Nursery Rhymes of England. And I use that book as a source for many of the rhymes that are part of my reflection. The great encouragement which has been given by the public to the previous editions of this work satisfactorily proves that there still exists an undying love for the popular remnants of the ancient English language, nursery literature. The infants and children of the 19th century have not deserted the rhymes chanted so many ages since by mothers and nannies. This is a great nursery fact, a proof that there is contained in some of these traditional rhymes a meaning and a romance possibly intelligible only to the very young minds that exercise an influence on the fancy of children. It is obvious there must exist something of this kind, for no modern compositions are found to supply altogether the place of the ancient doggerel. The nursery rhyme is the novel and light reading of the infant scholar. The absurdity and frivolity of the rhyme may naturally be its chief attraction to the very young, and there will be something lost from the imagination of that child whose parents insist so much on matters of fact that the cow must be made to jump under the moon instead of over the moon. In some 20th century renderings of nursery rhymes, the violence is removed and even Christian ethics inserted. I have a Bible version of Mother Goose. These or any such objections are more silly than the worst nursery rhyme the little readers, or you, dear listeners, will meet with in the following reflection. Was Mother Goose a Unitarian Universalist? The first question that needs to be answered is, was there a Mother Goose? And was she the author of our familiar nursery rhymes? The answer to these questions has been the subject of great debate and even antagonism between British researchers and American archivists. Thus, in England, we speak of nursery rhymes, and here we call them Mother Goose rhymes. A fact that has opened a whole new source of eBay buys for me since I discovered the nursery rhyme listings, and a plethora of British books are under nursery rhymes and not Mother Goose. The first mention we have of Mother Goose was in a book of fairy tales written by Perrault, published in France in 1696 as Conte de ma Mère Oye. Historians say the name may refer to French Queen Bertha, who had large feet, and maybe even wed. America claims the origin of the title as being Elizabeth Vergoose of Boston, who married a widower with 10 children and proceeded to have 6 more children with him. Her son-in-law, Thomas Fleet, published a book in 1719 called Songs for the Nursery, or Mother Goose's Melodies for Children. The cover of the book allegedly showed a picture of a female goose reading to her children. The book has never been found, which diminishes the credence of its authorship. Monroe and Francis published a Mother Goose Melodies in 1833, which claimed to be a reprint, complete with a cover picture, but the only connection to the original compilation is the word of Ms. Vergoose's great-grandson. British publishers have never bought this story. Thus, Mother Goose has become a shadowy figure who may or may not ever existed, who has devoted followings of children in many countries. This demi-goddess has a body of written work with roots in folklore and oral tradition of poetry and parables, marvels and platitudes, prolifically published in numerous translations throughout the world. You see where I'm going with this. I don't think a comparison between Mother Goose as Messiah goddess and the Bible as a book of nursery rhymes is that big a stretch. I'm going to make it regardless. And I'm going to look at the body of work nursery rhymes that have come to us through many sources and gathered and compiled by editors over the years to see if they speak truths to UUs and our 7 principles. But before I start on the principles, I want to make some comments on efforts in the 20th century to soften the traditional language of nursery rhymes and remove the violent sexism and politically incorrect references to the environment from them, sort of like's been done with the Bible. The first such effort was L. Frank Baum's Mother Goose and Crows, written in 1899. You may know that name from The Wizard of Oz. The wording of the original rhymes reflects the times in which they were written. Lucy Rollin, author of a 1992 psychoanalysis of nursery rhymes entitled Cradle and All, wrote, "I prefer to accept the violence in the rhymes as a psychologically healthful element, allowing children and adults to express hostile thoughts in a relatively harmless manner, as do most of us who watch Clint Eastwood's movies, read crime novels, or enjoy football. I accept the rhymes as they are, acknowledging their warts and hoping that we will learn from them much more than the sum of those particular parts." The late Maurice Sendak held a similar view of childhood. He thought children should not be shielded completely from reality, as in the scary monsters in Where the Wild Things Are, for which he won a Caldecott medal. Marjorie Decker published Christian Mother Goose in 1977, rewriting the traditional rhymes and filling them with references to God and Christ. Thus, Little Jumping Joan, who in the original wording refers to a prostitute of local renown, becomes, "Here am I, little Jumping Joan, since Jesus is with me, I'm not alone." That was the tune that Annie played before the reflection. One of my favorite PC reformations is Dr. Doug Larch's rhyme in Father Gander. There was an old couple who lived in a shoe. They had so many children they didn't know what to do. So they gave them some broth and some good whole wheat bread and kissed them all sweetly and sent them to bed. There's only one issue I don't understand. If they didn't want so many, why didn't they plan? As I cite a particular rhyme, I may also tell you what is known of its origin, but the words of the rhyme itself will be my source for the suggestion of UU principle, not the author or alleged subject of the rhyme, with one exception which I will point out at the time. Iona and Peter Opie, in their Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, published in 1951, with a new edition in 1997, attempted to cull the myths and absurdity from the abundance of attributions in traditional rhymes. The suspected origins are intriguing, but Gloria Delamar in Mother Goose from Nursery to Literature cautions, "Tracing origins is scholar's play, and finding something no one else has unearthed is exhilarating, but sometimes efforts get convoluted. Perhaps it's enough to just enjoy the traditional nursery rhymes." And now to the 7 principles. I'm going to read the rhymes I think speak to those canons and let you make the connection or not. I will be happy to discuss my choices at the end of this presentation. 1. Inherent worth and dignity of every person. The following verses were recorded first in 1829, but probably existed in oral tradition long before then. What are little boys made of? Frogs and snails and puppy dogs' tails. That's what little boys are made of. What are little girls made of? Sugar and spice and all that is nice. That's what little girls are made of. To even out the sexism in these verses, Robert Southey added the following in 1820. What are some women made of? Well, bell metal mouths and leathern lungs. Goose's brains and parrot's tongues. That's what some women are made of. 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. This one was easy if you will allow me to include animals as human in some cases. For justice, we have Charlie stole the barley out of the baker's shop. The baker came out and gave him a clap, which made poor Charlie hop. Equity and compassion is reflected in the following rhyme, which was alluded to in 3 Shakespeare plays. John Land, organist at Westminster Cathedral, wrote the first rendition in 1580. Ding dong bell, pussy's in the well. Who put her in? Little Johnny Green. Who pulled her out? Little Tommy Snout. What a naughty boy was that to try to drown poor Pussycat, who never did him any harm and killed the mice in his father's barn. Also the very familiar rhyme which first appeared in an infant school book in 1829. I love little pussy, her coat is so warm, and if I don't hurt her, she'll do me no harm. So I'll not pull her tail nor drive her away, but pussy and I very gently will play. The following was written to foster the English Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act of 1822. If I had a donkey that would not go, would I beat him? Oh, no, no. I'd put him in the barn and give him some corn, the best little donkey that ever was born. For equity, I propose this poem, first published in 1842, which allegedly is about the amity reached between Scotland and England in 1640. My little old man and I fell out, and what do you think it was all about? I had money and he had none. And that's the way the row begun. Finally, a limerick from the first book of limericks published in 1820 to illustrate compassion. There was an old woman of Leeds who spent all her time in good deeds. She worked for the poor till her fingers were sore, this pious old woman of Leeds. 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. For some reason, this was the hardest principle for which to find appropriate rhymes. The following, recorded in Victorian times, but probably older, is a bit of a stretch, but is the best I could do. Birds of a feather flock together, and so will pigs and swine. Rats and mice will have their choice, and so will I have mine. And this Scottish couplet from 1721. A cat may look at a king, and sure I may look at an ugly thing. This ditty from 1762 was supposedly a favorite of Sir Walter Scott. There was a jolly miller once, lived on the River Dee, and this he sang from morn to night. I care for nobody, no, not I, if nobody cares for me. And on the side of non-acceptance, but a stripe for spiritual growth, a version of Goosey Goosey Gander from 1784. Old Father Longlegs won't say his prayers. Take him by the left leg and throw him downstairs. And when he's at the bottom before he long has lain, take him by the right leg and throw him up again. 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Many traditional rhymes started out as proverbs or maxims from as early as the 13th century. This example from 17th century Latin grammars and primers. The cock crows in the morn to tell us to rise, and he that lies late will never be wise. For early to bed and early to rise is the way to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And this first published in Punch, April 10, 1875. A wise old owl lived in an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we all be like that wise old bird? Another adage. If you are not handsome at 20, not strong at 30, not rich at 40, not wise at 50, you never will be. Concluding with this variation on the same theme as above, as foolish as monkeys till 20 or more, as bold as a lion till 40 and 4, as cunning as foxes till 70 and 10, we then become asses and are no more men. Men, of the democratic process. Some more stretching here, but bear with me. The following refers to the export tax on wool imposed in 1725. Bah, bah, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. 1 for my master, and 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane. And how about, God made the bees, and the bees make honey. The miller's man does all the work, but the miller makes the money. I warned you it would be a stretch. 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let's start with peace and this rhyme, which alludes to Henry IV's preemptive attack on France in 1610, which was thwarted when Harry was assassinated. This is the one exception on origin based on source rather than content that I cited earlier. The King of France went up the hill with 40,000 men. The King of France came down the hill and ne'er went up again. And a poem perhaps inspired by a feud between Bononcini and Handel in 1725, which was recalled by Alice in Through the Looking Glass. Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle, for Tweedledum and Tweedledee had spoiled his nice new rattle. Just then flew by a monstrous crow as big as a tar barrel, which frightened both the heroes so they quite forgot their quarrel. For liberty, I offer excerpts from The Spider and the Fly by Mary Howitt, a Quaker, who with her husband took on liberal causes such as anti-slavery, women's rights, and even spiritualism. Will you walk into my parlor, said the spider to the fly? 'Tis the prettiest little parlor that ever you did spy. Oh, no, no, said the fly, to ask me is in vain, for who goes up your winding stair can ne'er come down again. Alas, alas, how very soon this silly little fly, hearing the spider's wily words, again came flitting by. Up jumped the cunning spider and firmly held her fast. He dragged her up his winding stair into his dismal den, within his little parlor, but she ne'er came back again. And now, dear little children, who may this story read, to idle, silly, flattering words I pray you ne'er take heed, until an evil counselor close heart and ear and eye, close heart and ear and eye, and take a lesson from this tale of the spider and the fly. And a final liberty couplet. If you wish to live and thrive, let the spider walk alive. A robin redbreast in a cage sets all heaven in a rage. Now for an incident of justice meted out, in this case, for stealing a pig. The pig that was eaten is a candy of the day around 1795, shaped like a pig. For you fellow vegetarians, it's not really a pig. Tom, Tom the piper's son stole a pig and away he run. The pig was eat and Tom was beat and Tom went howling down the street. And a familiar rhyme from 1782, mocking royalty. The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts all on a summer's day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole the tarts and took them clean away. The King of Hearts called for the tarts and beat the knave full sore. The Knave of Hearts brought back the tarts and vowed he'd steal no more. Finally, a less-known rhyme from around 1475. There was a man, and he had naught, and robbers came to rob him. He crept up to the chimney top, and then they thought they had him. But he got down on the other side, and then they could not find him. He ran 14 miles in 15 days and never looked behind him. And finally, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Amazingly enough, this was the easiest principle to find appropriate rhymes, and not too much stretching either. The first one refers to King Charles I and his wife Henrietta Marie, alluding to the greed of the Catholic Church in 1639. Jack Spratt could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean, and so between them both, you see, they licked the platter clean. This one about a legendary recycler first appeared in 1799. When good King Arthur ruled the land, he was a goodly king. He stole 3 pecks of barley meal to make a bag pudding. The king and queen did eat thereof, and noblemen beside. And what they could not eat that night, the queen next morning fried. Maybe a little stretch. But here's a good one, a Scottish saying. I must not throw upon the floor the crust I cannot eat, for many a hungry little one would think it quite a treat. 'Tis willful waste brings woeful want, and you may live to say, how I wish I had that crust that once I threw away. So now I'll let you decide whether or not Mother Goose was a Unitarian Universalist. I rest my case.